As with the video on making the test shape, this isn't really required viewing. This is just a bit of background if you want to know more about mapping modes and how they impact upon picture textures. So I'm going to bring in by importing the object, the test shape object that I made in the previous video, and just pop it down in front of the camera so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to start by modifying the entire material of the object, and in the diffuse channel I'm going to put blob, and then I'm going to select image texture, go into the texture source editor, click on an empty square, and notice that I've forgotten to make the texture yet, so we'll just sort that out. So in Paint Shop Pro, new file, OK. I'm going to flood fill this with a checker pattern, and it's only a very small texture because that will show up something else as well when we get round to it. And I'm going to use a paintbrush and put a very small pixel in the top left hand corner there that's a radically different colour from everything else in this image, and then just file, save copy as, and call this test. So that's my test image, and now if I go back to Bryce it should be there for me to pick up, so I'll pick that up, and you can see there's that little magenta pixel in the top left hand corner. You can see that on the default Bryce sphere it looks okay, but when we go to our object now and render it, it's all turned pink, and this is because the object was not made with any UV map associated with it, and the result of that is that it doesn't know how to apply that texture. So if you wanted to get around that without applying a UV map, you could use another mapping mode. So for example, Object Cubic could work quite well. You see that our sphere has got this applied from various directions, and if we render this now, you see the checkerboard looks a bit fuzzy, but it's got these quite sharp tears on the surface of the object, and that's where you've got patterns being applied like from the front or the side or above, meeting and them having to switch from side to side, so they're projecting from different directions, and these are the joins where it decides that that bit was from the side but this bit's from the front, that kind of thing. So it's not perfect. If you want to apply the pattern more intelligently and you've got a two-dimensional texture, even if it's a repeating pattern, you need a UV map to tell it how it can be applied. So that's what we're going to sort out. Before I do that though, I'm just going to show you this little control down here, picked interpolation, and what that does is it blurs adjacent pixels. This can cause problems with maps because the outside edge here can get blurred onto the inside edge there. So if you don't want that kind of repeating effect, you don't want that turned on, and likewise your pattern will look soft. So if you've got this checkerboard pattern and you want it to look sharp, you can turn that off, and then you'll see when it renders, these renders. Okay, render, thank you. The edges look sharp on the checkerboard pattern now, so the joins where it shifts from one projection to another look less obvious, though still it's not entirely perfect. So we're going to use UV Mapper Classic, which is a free program, and just provide a UV map for the shape. So what I'll do is file and load model. So I just need to find where my model is, so wherever I've left it, and here we go. That's the test shape. Open that, or I can just drag and drop it in from the other monitor, get a bit of stats from that, and then it tells you there's no UV map. So you go edit, new UV map, and I'm going to do spherical. So because the model is lying flat on the ground, I'm going to go for Y axis, so that's an axis straight through the top and the middle. I'm going to scale the result and go OK, and that should more or less fill this area. And then I go file and save model and go OK with those options. Overwrite my existing model, yep, that's fine. Go back to Bryce, and that was the old one without a UV map, so overhead view, I'll just put that to one side, file, import object, bring my new model back in, that's okay, and put that alongside it, drop it down. So the first thing you might notice is it's lost the colours that were applied to it in Wings 3D. However, it still remained its constituent parts, so if I select this object and then select the new object and go material and just modify that back to parametric and then check out, you should be able to see that this one, no UV map, this one, spherical UV map, now knows a bit about how to apply this pattern. If we want to increase the frequency of the pattern, so you want to do that in multiples of 5.9. Horo discovered this, and so if we go 5.9, 5.9, then it'll exactly repeat and it will increase in frequency. So if you get your calculator out now, if you're not very good at mental arithmetic, so that's me, so that's 5.9 times, say, 3, will give us 17.7, which would be a good value to choose if we wanted the frequency to go up by a factor of 3 and the pattern to repeat nicely. So you may wonder why we're going on about this, of all things to be talking about. Well, unlike the other metals that were been provided, like the Treppenhorst set and the other one that escapes me now because my memory's gone blank. Hang on a second. Right, the power of the internet. Okay, and the heating room set, this one. These metals will provide, oh, there's the Treppenhorst one. These metals used object cubic mapping. The new ones use parametric mapping, which relies on UV maps. Hence the use of UVmapper to provide some UV maps. And if you wanted to change the kind of UV maps that apply to these models, then you can do that through exporting the model and putting them through UVmapper and then importing them back in. You're just a bit careful with exporting models from Bryce because Bryce can crash, so make sure you do it in a new scene and then produce. I'll show you, that's the easiest way. So let's say we have a model we want to change the UV mapping on. So there could be crashing at this point, so bear with me. So let's go to our funky shapes and say, I'll pick this one out here. So load that one in. Hang on a minute, I've managed to miss the tick box there. Okay, there it is. Just move the camera. Right, let's see. We'll pop our checkerboard pattern on here while we're at it. That's good. So you can see that it already has a UV map. And it's symmetrical, so it's a spherical map around the top here. This zigzaggy edge, which wouldn't show up on the metals that we've provided, is very obvious on this checkerboard pattern, which is where the two halves meet. So that's a spherical map, and bear in mind you can do spherical mapping in other ways. You've got the option here in Bryce, which allows you a seamless version, but it doesn't allow you the flexibility of having a UV map. So let's set this to default material so we don't export any textures, and file, and I'm going to export this object, and we'll use OBJ format and call this, oh, it doesn't matter, it's given it a name, so that's good. So that's exported. Now remember what I said, don't want to load it into this Bryce again because that might crash Bryce. So I'll launch another version of Bryce and go back to the UV mapper and file and import model. So if I load model, find it here, find my exported model, that'll just load in there, and go OK. It said it was an error opening the material library. That doesn't matter. I'm not interested in that. I didn't want to export any materials because that would slow Bryce down. You can see that's our existing UV map. It's already got one, but we can just edit, go new UV map, and say have planner. So that's from two directions. So we should see it appear in like two halves. So that produces a different effect. Perhaps not as ideal as the spherical map, and you have the option with planner as well. So we could go planner, and you can combine those two halves. So don't split, and have it like that. And go file, save model. OK. I'll just overwrite that existing one. Go yes. Bryce has launched itself in the background, which I asked it to. So I'm going to import object, and here's this object that I exported and re-UV mapped. Bring it back in, edit, enlarge it, lift it up. So there we go, and go to material, pop in that picture which was prepared in PaintShop Pro, and hopefully, if all goes well, it will now recognize that it's been provided with a new UV map. So it's a new way of applying this texture, and you'll see a difference. So there you go, it's been applied from the front. There's also some ambient there that I can see. So there you go, that's just a quick guide to changing the UV mapping on these objects, or if you don't want to do that, you can get around and use object cubic, and if you just switch from parametric to object cubic, you're no longer reliant on having a UV map. Likewise, you could use spherical mapping, but there are drawbacks and advantages in each method. So Just be aware that Bryce has this flexibility, and that if you go from parametric to spherical, then you don't need a UV map, and the materials will work just as well. You just need to scale them accordingly so that they wrap around. So I think you'll find in this case that the 5.9 rule will work just as well. I've not tested that, but there's a good chance because Bryce is quite consistent in that respect. So let's have a look at that and see if it looks okay or broken. Looks pretty good. Okay then, so there you go, that's the end of this video. I hope you found that useful, and you'll be able to apply these techniques in your own models. Right, cheers now.